Welcome, welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. If I could have thought forever or asked for so many people's professional advice on what would you call this podcast, I didn't ask anybody's advice. I just 8 years ago decided this is what I'm going to call this podcast. I don't think anyone could have picked a better title for me than I did, because we cover so many things here. We cover things that are for men, for women, for us as a society, for individuals, for parents, for mothers, for children. We talk about really scholastical things, and then we talk about things that are just about the heart. It's all involved in how we craft this life. And today I have a very exciting guest who is a dear friend of mine. And I think that you are going to love her as much as I do. And well, I'm not going to say anything more about it. We're just going to talk about it together. So please welcome with me my guest today, Tenille Taggart. Please welcome you here. Yay!
Thank you, Mary. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on this beautiful podcast.
We've been trying for a while to get on together.
We have. Months and months. And the powers that be brought us together finally on this day, and
Yeah.
it was meant to be.
We were just committed, both of us, because we
hmm
sensed what was here. And not just between the two of us, but what was here for my listeners as well on that broader piece. And I think that that's one of the things that I love most about having you on is that you're a big picture thinker like I am. It's not just what's right in front of your face. It's how do I lift this planet? How do I step into being the best human possible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with
Which,
you. Tell
yeah.
everyone a little bit about you. I mean, you've had a lot of education. You've had a lot of different career walks, and let's catch them up to today.
Sure. Um, so I mostly grew up here in Utah, and I initially went to BYU. I was raised Mormon, and um,
I
I
noticed that. I noticed that we
yeah,
had both went to BYU. I wasn't raised Mormon, but I joined the church and played out a lovely role in my life and until it didn't, and now I'm doing something different.
I didn't know that about you. Yeah, so I went to BYU. It did not connect with me. I unknowingly was gay, and just I didn't have words or understanding for it, and I
Yeah.
just really struggled there, and I ended up dropping out after 2.5 years because I gave it my all, and you know, couldn't understand why I was waking up late for my 6 p.m. class. Why was it so hard for me to get up at 6 p.m.? And so I decided to do that for my well-being. And I ended up moving out to West Hollywood, where I very quickly realized I was gay and was like, I didn't need to fear it as much as I did, because for me to explore that here in Utah would have meant losing my family, my community, my church,
Yep.
my university, literally
Yep.
everything I had ever known and loved in my life. And it was just too much of a risk for me. So when I moved out to Southern California, I just was finally able to figure out who I am without the pretenses put upon me by religion or my family or things like that. So I really grew into myself and figured out who I was, and did sort of have this larger vision of what my life could look like. And I ended up going back to school in San Diego at San Diego State University for psychology, and I had my pick of grad schools to go to. So I went to a top three university in New York for clinical psychology, and
Yeah.
I was able to do therapy, research, um, and I taught at the university too. I was awarded a $100,000 grant from the National Science Foundation to study transgender folks. And from that, I published the first longitudinal study about trans youth on gender affirming hormones and how it improves their mental health and well-being. And then I went for a year of internship out to San Bernardino County, where I worked for the largest county in the entire nation. And I was doing forensic mental health. And so
Ah,
I worked with a large treatment team, and I would go into the courts and get folks who we thought might be a good fit for this program where they had mental health and substance use disorders and they had received a felony. And I'd interview them and we determine if they were a good candidate for this program, where if they participated for 18 to 24 months, got therapy, stayed sober, worked with a caseworker, did all these things, that they could have their felony reduced to a misdemeanor. And so I got to see firsthand what it's like when we rehabilitate people, when we invest in them, and how it can turn their lives around. It was a very important piece of my education and my life learning. And what I would say is they did such a good job of teaching me that this is a systems issue. And the systems that we have built and that we are in are a big contributor to things like reliance on the criminal justice system and throwing away a key when somebody commits a felony. And I wanted to be in the room where these decisions were being made. And that's kind of what's launched me into politics is, like I've always been very patriotic. I was raised very patriotic. My dad worked for President Reagan when I was born. So this has always been something that's resided in me. I switched from being Republican to Democrat. And I see this as taking care of each other, of loving my neighbor. These values that were instilled in me from my church and my family have continued on. And that is where I get
yeah.
that drive to say everyone deserves the same chance. Everyone should be able to eat food and have a good life and, like not have to worry about where they're going to lay their head down at night, things like that. So, um, that is kind of what drove me into politics and why I'm now running for Salt Lake County Council. And so I'm very excited about that. And I would have a direct influence on things like the criminal justice system here, because currently 74 cents of every county dollar is going towards the criminal justice system. And that's up from 55 cents in just June. So
Wow.
I am very passionate about these things. I've got a lot of experience firsthand, as well as I'm a scientist. I've also been in financial services, and a lot of it is budgeting. And I had to learn how to budget and how to take care of myself from a very early age. And so I creatively figured out how I was going to put myself through college, that I never had a backup plan. I couldn't rely on my family. And I started working at least one job by age 13 because of that. So I do feel like everything has led me up until this point
Hmm.
to to be ready for this council run that I'm undertaking right
In the
now.
middle of, yeah, kind of you either love being involved in politics right now or you hate it. And I'm so glad that
Yeah.
there are people like you who love it, because there's people like me who absolutely.
I kind of hate it too. I love it and I hate it.
This is an
It
interesting piece that I didn't know that we shared, that this is in a different life, but I was a juvenile parole officer. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Believe it or not. And
Wow.
when I worked in that field, and I think of all the kids that were put into lockup, and I work with them after they come out, trying to get them back into society.
Or-
I'm not aware, Tenille, of a single success case that I had
mm,
and that's why I didn't stay in that field. It just did not feel like where I could make my biggest impact at that time in the state, because you have to think this was 45 years ago. that at that point in the state, making those kind of inroads that you're talking about making just wasn't even feasible. We locked
Yeah.
him up, we put him out. We locked him up, we put him out. And to the large part, that has been the scenario of the criminal justice system for the
Yeah.
last 45 years. Lock them up, put them on the street. Lock them up, put them on the street. And now I see some things out there that are happening that are allowing us to step into a different way of dealing with that kind of dysfunction. And so, as you look at going forward, even as just a city councilman, I don't mean to say even as just, let me rephrase that. That's a big step because Salt Lake is the largest county in the state. So, as you step into that, how do you see that being able to impact what's happening in our criminal justice system?
Yeah. I think that what we are seeing in San Bernardino County, what we're seeing in Miami right now, they are demonstrating that there are ways to address folks who are involved in the criminal justice system in ways that reduces recidivism by 80%, I think is the number, and has a significant effect on making sure folks get back to being those productive, engaged citizens again. And so I think truly it starts with things like daycares. Recently, the Salt Lake County Council canceled the daycares that were safe, affordable, and accessible for our working families here. They are now going to have to pay double and triple to put their kids in daycare so that they can go to work, which means most often women are going to be staying home now
Yeah,
because it doesn't make sense to work just to put them
yeah.
into daycare or to have a whole mortgage payment of daycare or for them to move out of the county so that they can commute in. I mean, it's just, $1 of daycare returns $9 of savings in the criminal justice system in preventing them from being on drugs, in preventing them from getting into the juvenile justice system, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
So this is where that system comes into real importance. We need to make sure we've got our third spaces open that are free and engaging for folks, like the libraries, the arts, the parks, um, places for these kids to go when they need safety and guidance. And when we're not doing that, we're setting them up to be put directly into the criminal justice system.
One of the things
So,
that, as I worked with, and of course, as you know, I went on to then be in the hospitality industry, which had nothing to do
yes.
with the other. But the moment I was able to move my focus back to service, that's where I looked at. I wanted to be involved with early childhood, with children, with moms, single moms, domestic violence,
Yeah.
childhood sexual abuse, all those things that are impacting at that early age where we know that that's where the trauma happens that affects them the rest of their life.
Yes.
And if you can carry that banner, I try in my just a little flag, but that says, if we invest this, like you said, $1, we're going to save 9. And I saw that again and again and again. When we think we're saving ourselves $1, we just wait 10 years and see where it cost us $9 then to help them as homeless people or have them on welfare or provide health care for them because they don't have a job. It's
Hmm.
like a snowball kind of effect. And when we don't help the child, that early
Yeah.
year that you're talking about, 0 to 5. In fact, you know this stat. I worked with it a lot when I was volunteering at the United Way, that by age 7, their reading ability at age 7, the state can determine how many prisons they need to build based on a child's reading ability at age 7. They can predict their success or their non-success. And so rather than running these studies of how many prisons we're going to build, let's just take those bucks and put them into those reading programs, those daycare programs, those things where children will get a start and be successful. Okay,
You're
I'm
exactly
going to
right.
step off my bandwagon for just a minute. I'm going to let you share your wisdom on how we do that.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So, how do we do that? Well, unfortunately, right now there is a Republican majority on the Salt Lake County Council, and they're the ones who unanimously voted to shut down the daycares. They tried to cancel senior centers. There was major upset about all of these things, so they reversed course on the senior centers, but they're coming for those next.
Yeah.
If we don't take care of our seniors, then that's really bad. And then they also canceled women in trade programs so that women can't can't get the same opportunities. And we know
Whoa,
that,
whoa, 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 whoa. Let's back
yeah.
up. I want to know more about that. I didn't know anything
See,
about that.
this is why I say local politics matter so much, and most people have no idea what goes on at the local level or who's running or who's in charge or what they're over. And so they they went on a run and just tried to start canceling everything. And the women in trade hurts because Utah is dead last for equality of women,
Yeah.
for the gender pay gap of women, and it is abysmal here. And then we're canceling the daycares, which means they're going to be paying more to put the kids in these daycare. I mean, again, it doesn't make sense. So a lot of women are now dropping out, having to go back to the home. And what we're seeing these Republican women do is they go out, they get the jobs, they get into these positions of power, and then they're pulling up the ladder behind them. And that is not what I believe in. I want to let the ladder down and bring all of us up. We all deserve to rise. And we do that by building community, by investing in the things that truly make communities thrive and build healthy families. And that is like a great point you mentioned, with child sexual abuse, domestic violence. Guess what else Utah's known for?
Yeah.
Those skyrocketing rates.
Yeah.
If they have safe, affordable daycares, because one of the council members said, "Oh, just have your neighbor watch them." Who does, who gets assaulted by
Yep.
their neighbors when they're being watched as little children. Those
Yep.
are not safe, affordable, accessible daycares, and it results in lifelong trauma to those folks. And so when we aren't investing in our community, we're telling them they're not important, they don't matter. I mean, it starts from a very young age. And I saw that being a girl. I was never allowed to do anything here. That was the boys. Everything that I wanted to join my brothers in, it was, no, you can't do that. You're a girl. And I'm like, what is happening? And that still goes on today. I see it here in Utah, especially because when I went to New York, to California, I did not see and feel the same way that I felt especially when I came back here. And it was like a slap in the face that I'm like, whoa, this really still exists here. Is very
Yeah.
sexist view of life and what's allowed and what isn't. And I hadn't seen that. I was living away for almost 20 years. So that was a big shocker to me to see that, and then to have um, to see what's going on in our local politics, that they are just out to hurt minorities and people who are the least among us, the most vulnerable. We should be making sure those are the number one folks we're taking care of. And again, we all rise when we come up together.
Yeah. We
So,
talked about that before the podcast started, that great rising tide that comes in from the ocean raises all ships to be able
all
to get
ships.
to the dock. Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
had an experience this legislative session. Um, One of my heart causes is women with domestic violence, because that was my journey
Yeah. Yeah.
for 28 years. And so
Wow.
now to be able to see those women and to want to be able to say, if we want to make a difference in the lives of those women and the lives of those children, we need to be able to intercede when they want our support.
Yes.
When I first went, well, as you know, I told you I was in the childhood and family services with the state. And I started the first domestic violence shelter in Utah County. There
You
was
started the first one.
there were no
Wow.
services. The police would bring them to the offices of Division of Family Services. They would drop them off. We had nowhere to put them. There were no shelters.
No, safe
And
safe spaces.
and so if we had the funds, we would take them to a hotel, a motel with the light bulb hanging in the middle of the room, to a motel for the night, thinking that that was enough time to allow them to get help from their family or whatever. And in 99.9% of the cases, they simply went back. Then from there, we began to get a few more services. And little did I know that 7 years later, I would be there with my 2 babies. And the kind of services that were there were very meager. There wasn't anyone there to counsel me. There wasn't anyone there for me to talk to. You just stayed in this little room, and then the next day they asked you, well, what have you decided you'd do? And I'm like, and my children, my 2 babies are crying. Just want to go home, Mama, home. And I went back and stayed for 28 years. Now, in the
Mm.
meantime, the state devoted more resources. They now have so many services that they can offer in terms of therapy, in terms of job counseling, in terms of, you had to leave without any clothes or any food. Here you go. You want emergency housing for a few days? Here you go. You need temporary housing for up to 2 years? Here you go. And the services are there. The facilities are not. So I agreed to sit on the capital campaign chairman to raise money to put this new domestic shelter place in Utah County. We went to the legislature this year, and the appropriations just came out, and we got zero. Zero. We have a
This
HUD
is a
grant.
systems problem.
We have a
This
HUD
is the
grant for
system.
$9 million that we're going to lose because we're not able to break ground this fall. The ground is purchased, but we can't break ground. I mean, and
That's heartbreaking.
there was no vision here to see. So if we don't start this, what happens? Last year, 440 women were turned away, got zero services. What happened to those women? Where are they now? Where are their children? How are they going to be relying now on the system for support the rest of their lives?
Yeah.
So, girl, I'm with you. We have to
Yeah.
change the system and see what one does, what the other does. And I looked at those
Yep.
appropriations lists of what got money and what didn't. And I'm like, okay, not that I'm not for parks. I love parks. But we have women
And
that are suffering and
yeah.
children that are suffering and are being abused and beat and sexually violated because we don't have a place to put them and keep them safe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. That will be that.
It is so important though. I recently went to a talk about this with a gal who runs one of these. I believe it's in Davis County, and of course I'm forgetting the name of it, but the same exact problems. There is not enough beds.
Yep.
And we know that when women leave, it is the most lethal
Yep.
time that there is. And they are risking everything to even reach out to find out there's no beds, there's no beds available. So, yeah, what does happen to those women? We know.
Yeah. They go back.
Yeah.
It is something I'm passionate about, Tenille. So as you walk in this journey of politics, I hate to even use that word, that just know that you have a woman that would also stand beside you and do
Thank you.
whatever is needed, because you and I both see the value of the whole. You cannot just save the one. Okay. Take a deep breath. Mary. Take a
I know.
breath.
We just get in it. We get in it.
Oh,
I
all
didn't
right.
know that about you. That's really amazing that you've done that for Utah. Thank you.
And, you know, I'm involved with 30 different nonprofits, some a little bit, some a lot,
Just a few.
just a few,
Just
just
a
a
few.
few.
Yeah.
And if I do nothing more than simply look at their social media posts and support and make a comment, my name is there, my witness is there, they feel my support. You know,
Mhm.
d- different nonprofits that I donate on a $10 a month. And
It
someone said,
makes a huge difference.
"Do you know what that's like, Mary? When I see that little $10 come in, I get a little ding on my phone. Oh, Mary sent her $10 this month." And we're lifting in whatever way is possible for us.
Yeah.
Now, as you look at our state, and not just our state, now we're talking about every state in this country where people are, so many just want to throw up, well, they have thrown up their hands. They're like, what
Yeah.
difference can I make? I don't like what's going
Yeah.
on, but I cannot make a difference. No one listens to me. I'm just one vote. You've heard it all. What do we say?
When things feel out of control, I say go local. And that is where you can have the biggest difference. For me, it's going into politics. For you, it might be going and stocking up the food pantry that's
Yeah.
around the corner in and available to families in need. Um, for other people, it might be donating $10 a month to someone else's campaign or to a domestic violence shelter. And you just truly have no idea how much local life matters and you can make a difference. And it does take some time to find out where you might want to make a difference. Like we were talking about, you found that the juvenile parole did not work for you and you found a different spot. It takes
Yeah.
time. Maybe it's going and walking dogs at the shelter so that they can get adopted out. Maybe it's fostering them. Maybe it's feeding the unhoused or making sure that they have a roof over their head or getting them to healthcare appointments or feeding um, families. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do that
Yeah.
it's not going to get you national attention, but that's not what we're looking for. What we're
Yeah.
looking for is building community and thriving together. So that's what I would say. When we feel out of control, we go local, and our voice matters so much more than we would ever believe.
Yeah.
And you're
I
going to
love
meet your
that.
people.
Go local, and take your eyes off that TV and all the things that you
Yes.
want to throw a bucket at the TV screen and look at what you can do locally. I think that's
Yeah.
such profound advice, because truly what we're looking to do is to create and foster safe communities.
Mhm.
And I'm going to give you a little pushback on something because
Okay, tell me.
okay. So, well, you are a Democrat. I'm neither. I sit in the middle. I have some things I like about Republican platform. I have things I like about Democratic platform. I'm just I look at people as people and not party. So that's where I sit. And it depends on what issues we're talking about, which way I lean. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
this is one of the things that I really want us to talk about this. This is one of the things that I find divisive on both sides, Tenille, when we blame the other side for being divisive, and that's the very thing that we're doing, is
Mhm.
being divisive and saying, well, you have no idea up from down. I know the truth. And you hear it from both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
And I do not think that it serves us to blame one side or the other. That just is going to lead to more division. How how do we begin to approach that, Tennille, in terms
Yeah,
of healing this us versus them mentality? Because it's on both sides.
I agree. Agree. I think for me, you know, because I don't like these terms either. Choose Democrat because that's the most closely aligned with my values. At the end of the day, I'm going to vote with my values and my morals every time. And so it doesn't matter what group I'm a part of. And if I could see that more, especially from the Republicans here who call themselves, um, the party of family values,
Yeah.
I want to see that. I want to see that. And if we start leading with our values, I would absolutely support anyone who's doing that and putting families first, especially our working families. Um, I would love to see that. And so I do think that there is a need to have these discussions more and to be more open minded. And it's not about winning unless
Yeah.
we're all winning, you know? And
Yep.
so when we're going out of our way to harm certain groups of people, I see that as violating my morals and my values. And it's really difficult for me to understand because a lot of these folks are Mormon and they espouse these these values that I was raised with too. And again, I'm not seeing them put into practice. So there's a missing link for me here where I think that we do have to reach across the aisle and have these heartfelt, meaningful discussions that are really difficult. And it is very hard because um, like trans folks are under attack right now and their literal lives depend on this legislation. And there was a young 14-year-old who came and testified at one of the hearings recently about trans youth being able to decide with their families, their adult parents, and their doctors what treatments might be best for them. And this 14-year-old girl testified that her friend had died by suicide back in October, largely because of access or limited access to health care and the hate she was receiving from the world. And that is where I think to myself, how do we treat the least among us, our neighbors, our people that we are supposed to love and treat with dignity, and let um, these these families make decisions that are not taken lightly. These are very um, very well thought out. This takes many professionals that they work with, many years of thoughtful, concerted effort to make these decisions. They are not taken lightly. And then to have them taken away by people in the
Yeah.
legislature who are just out there trying to harm people, um, that that is difficult for me to watch. And at the end of the day, they did not take that testimony into consideration, and they heard from many other people who testified similarly that this was life-saving care they were receiving, and at the end of the day, they're like, "Oh, well, good luck." And so I went to the Capitol with a handful of people to talk about trans rights, and, we were being a little loud saying, trans rights are human rights, or, you know, speaking about that. And we had a gentleman come up to us and say, "You're not doing it the right way. And you need to be writing your legislator, you need to be calling them, you need to be testifying." And we're like, "We are doing all of those things and they don't hear us and they are trying to kill us. So we should be more polite about it. We should be less loud about it because it's offensive
Oh,
to have to hear in the Capitol." And that's really difficult, when lives are on the line and they're telling us to be more polite about it, you know? Um, I think that if we want to see those kinds of changes, we've got to be more invested. We've got to get involved a little bit more locally, where we're voting, where we are participating, to make sure that if we don't like what certain folks are doing, we've got to get them out of office. We also have to cultivate communities so that good people are running, who are here to represent us and
sure.
here to represent the folks who really need it. And, that's one of the things too. I never knew an out LGBTQ person here. I never saw that in leadership anywhere.
Right.
And so for me, that's very important that I live out and proud and I show that young kid who maybe is wondering if they're safe and if they're okay and if they're normal, that yes, they are, and that it's okay to be who you are. And in fact, you can excel and go on to do really great things that matter and be part of your community and loved by your community. That is so important. And so I think that we need to lead by example, and that is not
Mhm.
always easy to do, right?
No, it's not. It's much
It's
easier to
not.
talk the talk than to walk the walk. Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is such a huge issue, and particularly in Utah, but I think across the country.
Yeah.
And I think we have seen this huge MAGA movement push back against what they saw as a lot of elimination of family values.
Yeah.
The problem lies when you said these are people who are who believe. I can't remember what exactly you said, but it was in essence kind of like, you know, they're standing up for family values. But that's where I think all of us are called to look at whose family values,
Yeah.
yours or ours or theirs. And when people speak about this, they say, well, it's the fundamental family values, the fundamental family values that have always been part of the United States. Okay, I agree that there were fundamental Christian values that founded a lot of things that went on in the United States. But just because that was where it began doesn't mean, Tenille, that that's where it ends.
Yeah.
That traditional family values might include a mother, a father, all heterosexual children, and the kumbaya at the end of each day.
Yeah.
But any of those people, I don't. I think of all the, very uh, LDS people that I know, no one has a family that is like that. That they're just plastered with the smiles, and all day long, they just have no problems. In fact, if they have that, I feel sorry for them because there's no growth in having no
Yeah.
problems. You're never going to grow and become a great individual by sitting on the beach in the Bahamas. You grow and become who you're going to be by being in the trenches.
Yeah.
So If we could just step back for a minute on both sides and say, I understand that that is your traditional family values. Can you make space for mine? Can we both have our traditional family values? In my family, I might have a heterosexual mother and father, but one of my children is trans, or one of my children is gay.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, that's their experience. And for us to presume that we can discount someone else's actual life experiences is such an arrogant stance. But also, what if you moved back and we pulled back the lens, Tenille, from we think we're comparing traditional family values? What if we pulled back the lens to the step behind that, which is the values that involve love, belonging,
Exactly.
acceptance, integrity, safety, trust? Those values supersede anybody's definition of their family values. That's
Mhm.
the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I think there may be some people who have never experienced that in their family, but they're few and far between now.
Yeah.
Someone, somewhere in your family or in your neighborhood or at work has been touched by this experience, and they are humans. I just beg people to give people that safety.
Humanity.
Okay, I'm going to tell you another story. I remember the first time, this is back when I was still very much LDS, and I was traveling with a group of caterers, and we were doing a food tour. And I think we were in California at the time. And I was trying to stand very firm in saying that the LGBTQ lifestyle is not right. But there was a piece inside of me that was just screaming at me, Mary, that has nothing to do with love and acceptance. But I was trying to be, you know, trying to be a good Mormon. And a dear friend of mine on that tour was gay. And he was one of my
Wow.
dearest friends. We sat by each other, we laughed, we ate together, we, did the hiking together, we did all sorts of things together. And finally one day he turned to me and goes, Mary, we have such a great time together and we are such good friends, but you think I'm inappropriate, don't you? I said, oh my gosh, I can't use that word. That word is not in my vocabulary to call you inappropriate. He goes, well, what do you call me? Oh, I don't know. Misled? I don't know. And he's like, let me just tell you something. He grabbed a hold of my shoulders and looked me right in the eye. And he said, Mary, I don't think I ever would have chosen this lifestyle. Do you not think that I wanted to be just like my parents? Do you not think that I wanted to be like the other kids in my school? Do you think I stepped up to the plate and said, I want to be rejected and I want to be laughed at and I want to make sure that I am never accepted in this life and so I'm going to choose to be gay? That's just not how it happened. It's the kind of thing where there wasn't a choice for me. Can you understand
The
that?
other choice was death, right?
And for the first time, Tenille, I was able to let down the brainwashing of that we must all fit this cookie cutter mold. And I threw my arms around him and I just said, I'm so sorry. And I decided that day I was never again not going to provide a safe place for people to be seen and heard and to know that I love them regardless. This is something I've never said on this podcast, but I'm going to say it here because I want us to talk about it. We're talking now back somewhere 15 to 20 years ago. I had divorced my husband, maybe 15, 16, and I divorced my husband who was gay. There's another little piece you didn't know about me.
No, I'm
Yeah,
learning a lot.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow.
But that's why he was so angry and had a rage disorder and a paranoia disorder and all those things, because he was trying so much to hide who he was. And it came raging out on me and our family because no one provided him a safe place. After we divorced, I was in a Joint Relief Society priesthood meeting, and they read the statement from the first presidency that said, they are not welcome in our chapels. They cannot come. They cannot do this. They cannot do that. They cannot be around us. And the tears just were streaming down my face. And I stood up. And if you have ever been in one of those meetings, you know you don't stand up. and I just
You have me on the edge of my seat here, Mary.
and I just said, the God that I know and love did not write that. That's not the God of love and forgiveness and acceptance and belonging. It's that day. And I've never been back.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I don't tell very many people that story, and now it's out to the world, so there we go. You know? But I have been impacted so much in my life by these kind of thought processes.
Yep.
And I will stand till my dying breath, Tenille, to allow people a place to find safety. I know that's
That
why
was
you're running.
beautiful.
That's why you're running.
It is. Thank you for sharing that. That takes so much courage and bravery to stand up and say that in a meeting
Yeah.
and to stick by it. I'm speechless. Wow. Thank you. And you
So,
have no idea how many other people that impacted when they heard that that day too, because
yeah.
everybody thinks that on the inside. Like when you were talking about your friend and you had that
Yeah.
thought inside where you said, Mary, this is not right. Others were thinking that too. They just didn't have the courage to stand up and say it. So that was you planting seeds for that garden. Beautiful.
So as we wind down our podcast today, I would like you to share what last little bit of thought and love you would like to leave with my listeners as we now turn to our own lives and bringing about things that we know to be right. What what is the thing you'd like to share?
I think that it's very connected to what we've been talking about is love thy neighbor and love thy neighbor as thyself. Um, that is how we can not only better our community but also ourselves. And we there is no losing when we treat each other that way. And I just really hope that every person can go out of their way today and every day to do something kind for someone. And it can be so simple as letting someone in traffic, as waving to somebody and smiling at them while you're taking a walk, or offering to make a friend a meal when they're having a hard time, or going and introducing yourself to the neighbors you don't know. Um, Community matters so much. And we have gotten so far away from that as we scroll and we watch TV and the little screen and the medium screen, is that we've got to get back to that in person connection and thinking of each other as humans and as loved ones and as community. And I do think that in this day and age, it is easy to dismiss certain type, certain people's humanities, and that is what's getting us into this problem. And I truly don't understand how harming someone else can make our own lives better. When we put out that kind of energy, that's the energy we get back. And so put out the energy that you want to receive back in your life, which is love, which is kindness, which is safety, all those values that you mentioned. Um, that's what I would say. It's about community.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today and for sharing your humanity. I love it. I love it. I love it. And to all of my listeners, I don't know what side of political spectrums that you sit on. I don't know how you feel about some of these very deeply important issues. I really have no idea if you think that I'm up in the night or if you think that Mary, she knows her stuff. Okay. I don't have any idea of that. But I want you to take from this that both of us have walked this path of really examining our lives. What is true for us as humans, not as a member of a church, not as a member of, a graduating from some university. That's a group. You could be taking on all sorts of different things from different groups. But what I want you to do is to examine what you have ended up with as your values based upon your lens and no one else's. And as we do that, and as we hone in on that lens, we can decide, am I a lens of love or am I a lens of disdain and despair? Am I a lens of safety here? And that when you come into my arms and my hug, is that a place that helps you be a better person? Or am I a place where people think, oh, that man, she always thinks she's better than all the rest of us. And then live that. So no matter what end and you are on with the spectrum of the things we've talked about today, I can tell you this discussion will have you thinking. And when you start thinking, that's when you start crafting your meaningful life. Namaste.
Crafting a meaningful life.